Hello, good evening. Welcome to worldBeat Television. I'm here with Nigerians 2019 presidential candidate.
No, aspirant. That is
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
I'm still aspiring.
2019 presidential aspirant,
Yes.
right here in San Francisco with us. And Mr. Shoyele? Omoyele, okay.
Sowore.
Omoyele Sowore is live in the studio with us. I'm going to basically this is a non-scripted interview. And basically what we're going to be doing is just having him talk to our audience and of course to Nigerians in diaspora and also the Nigerians all over the world, all over Africa, Asia, and basically introducing himself and also talking about his vision.
Yes.
So first and foremost, for somebody who have never met you before,
Yes.
never heard your name before, perhaps you could just introduce yourself to the audience and tell us who you are.
Yes, my name is Omoyele Sowore. I'm from Nigeria. I was born and raised in Ondo State, part of Nigeria that is the beginning of the Niger Delta region. And I am probably most well known for being a student activist and in recent years being a publisher of Sahara Reporters, which is a web-based investigative news platform that's based out of New York City.
So most people who, everybody have heard of Sahara Reporters, unless you're hiding under the rock somewhere. But tell us more, what actually inspired you from the get-go to be an activist?
Yeah, a lot of things. I think it's, my family background, where I grew up in. So I've been influenced by family, environment, and government, also governance. As young as when I was 10 years old, I experienced something that changed my life. My village was invaded by the police.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it was a terrible experience that changed the life of a lot of young people right in front of me. A very repressive police and also affected family, friends. This was a small place. And as young as when I was 10, this was 1980, I made a promise that when I grow up, if I have a chance, I will try and redress that injustice by way of activism. And I started since then reading up on activists, hiding away and listening to the music of legendary Afrobeat musician, Fela Anikulapo Kuti. And so when I got into college in 1989, Nigeria was firmly under the jackboot of military dictatorship. I quickly found solace in friends and other activists who were engaging in the military and fighting hard to restore democracy to Nigeria. So I started from there. And several events happened since then that just defined, that motivated, in some ways also discouraged me from doing what I did. But all of those factors combined together made me to be inspired to help bring about a Nigeria that would work for the people of Nigeria. So for 29 years I've been doing this until this year when I finally decided that it's not enough to stand on the sidelines, monitoring elections, writing stories about corruption. You have to step up and be in driver's seat and help save this country of 198 million people who badly need leadership that can take them to the next level, where things work for them, and by extension work for the African continent and black people.
That's incredible. So I'll just play the devil's advocate here, because many of us are living comfortably in the US.
Yes.
I've been here for over 30 years.
Wow.
So I could imagine.
Imagine when you came, you only wanted to spend 2 weeks like me.
That's it. That's it. But in your case, you already started the Sahara Reporters.
Yes.
You were in New York.
Yes.
You were comfortable.
Yes.
Why couldn't you have been satisfied just being there, living the life of luxury?
The question you should ask yourself is, what is luxury? What luxury means.
Having electricity,
Yeah.
clean water,
Yeah.
security.
Luxury can also be conscience, in which you feel like, okay, you have all these things here, but you have left a lot more people behind who could also benefit from those kind of exposure and experience. But most importantly, a lot of the life we call luxury here is actually fluff, to the extent that life is deeper than just, electricity, good roads, life is more about humanity sometimes. So if I'm living in luxury in New York and there's no luxury in my village, what difference does it make? You know, how can I claim to be living a life of luxury when I could have made a difference in my village or in my country? And I refuse to do that, hiding out here, hoping that one day, you know, I'll just die in luxury, you know, whereas you would have died in misery because your conscience keeps disturbing you, you know, why can't you do more for others?
So that patriotism is there, constantly pushing you.
You know, there is just this general internalized consciousness in people, in a lot of people like me, because I'm not the only person who's thinking this way. That we can make a lot of difference if we step out of the comfort zone, as you call it.
Exactly. So you've started various initiatives, which includes Sahara Reporters.
Yes.
So that's talking about being successful and having the competence to run a business, because it's still a very active medium today.
That's right.
That's a whole different ballgame than running the most complicated, what I would say, the country in Africa.
Yes.
What makes you a qualified person to run this mixed bag of chaos?
So I've been engaged over 29 years now in this very complex or complicated engagement with the Nigerian state and its controllers. And I've understood them, I've worked against successive governments as they step out of bounds, as they become oppressive, repressive, and tyrannical for about 29 years. So I'm not new to Nigeria. In fact, the side of Nigeria that I've been engaged with has been the most complex and dangerous, which is fighting the big kahunas, these guys who are destroying the country, guys who are milking the country, guys who are corrupt. I've been exposing them, fighting them, using in every little way I can, you know, tools. The most recent one being digital tools to disrupt their lifestyles and expose their corruption and incompetence. And in the process, I've become hardened incompetence myself. I mean, hardened incompetence. You know, I've developed capacity. You know, I have sharpened my character. You know, there's no doubt about integrity. There's no doubt about intellect, because I've also, in the process, attended schools, started from my village to the end of the world, New York City, where I obtained my master's degree in public administration. So, and all of those characteristics, all of those factors you need in a leader
Yes.
to make a difference are all there.
And you feel you're prepared.
And I have experience. I have, you know, I'm totally prepared. I have, you know, the pedigree. You can look at me and say, you know, these guys can do it. There's ample evidence that I can stand my ground, that I can, you know, I will not be compromised, that I can fight.
So, not to interrupt you,
Yes.
most people will think that running for such a high office in Nigeria is a dangerous endeavor. Yeah. Where are you getting your courage from?
Well, it's not me now. I think the courage, I'm getting a pool of vibes, positive vibes from people who are oppressed, who are disenfranchised, whose lives has been decimated over this year, saying, let's go. I am just a symbol of those who are prepared to fight to regain their dignity as citizens of the country known as Nigeria. So I think that's where the energy is coming from. But there's also stamina, which I developed over time.
Yes.
By getting involved in a lot of physical things, sometimes physical protests.
So you've been traveling.
A lot.
You've traveled all over Africa, so in some countries in Africa. You've been to some countries in Europe.
Yes.
What is the feedback that you're getting? What is the message that you're receiving from from Nigerians and Africans, I mean in Africa, and also Nigerians in Europe, and also Nigerians in America? What is the common synopsis of the message that you're getting from them?
That everybody's saying enough is enough. We're tired. They're tired of being led by sick and tired people, of recycled politicians, of criminals who have hijacked their future, you know, people who have arrested the development of their countries. That is what I'm getting. There's the feedback I'm getting from every person that I've met who's hosted me, asked me questions, who have supported this movement since we started. And it's only been 6 months of movement type politics that's revolutionary in nature, and also less than 1 month of the birth of our own political party, known as the African Action Congress, which was announced by the Independent National Electoral Commission recently. So everybody, both at home and abroad, are all tired of the way Nigeria has been governed. And it's even gotten to a head where they can't just phantom why, a president as old as he is, who has done nothing, delivered on none of his promises, is planning to return to office as if he's saying to Nigerians, it's time to drag your country down to the grave with me.
So you have your own party.
Yes. Well, we have our own party.
Yes,
Not
you have,
my
okay,
party.
I'm sorry. Yes. Why establish a whole new party and not try to work within the existing political party?
We tried and found out that most of the parties don't have the latitude to accommodate our aspirations and our ideological DNA, that's the way to call it, in such a way that we had to go look for something that can take care of all of that, because the breadth, the latitude, and the bandwidth that is needed to do what we want to do is so huge that we cannot rely on analog parties or people who are caked in their own ways of doing things. We need fresh beginning, we need new thinkers, fresh intellectuals, and all of them are saying, hey, for us to come on board, we need to have something that is brand new. So it's like choosing between buying a brand new computer with all very well loaded with all the tools and the apps, or using a 386 computer to start dealing with a problem that is so serious that, if you didn't take the right decision as to where you purchase your computer from, what type of computer you buy, you find out that you can't even start at all. I'm giving a digital analogy to the problem now, or example. So people are excited that we have our own party, and it's making a lot of people who's had a lot of barriers to entry into politics to feel comfortable, because most political parties in Nigeria have bad reputation, and people just see them as conduit for conducting, very corrupted elections and electing corrupt people into power.
Got a question for you, and this has to do with the demography of the people who you are going to be asking to vote for you.
Yes.
In any society, including here in America, we have older people who are entrenched in the way they vote and who are not interested in changing their voting patterns because that's how they've always voted.
Yes.
How do you convince such age gaps in Nigeria, the older generation, to change their voting patterns, since they've been comfortable, it seems, to be re-electing former military leaders who are now rebranded as civilians in Nigeria? How do you convince them to let go of that security blanket that they hold on to and trust the future of their children and their grandchildren in your hand?
It is embedded in the number of fresh voters that registered to vote in Nigeria this year. At the close of the the registration cycle for voters last August, over 14 million fresh voters just enrolled into on the voters register. It's the highest number ever in the history of Nigeria.
So do you think your candidacy, your intention may have motivated the
A lot of it could have happened. Party, or our movement was also instrumental to extending the registration of voters by 2 weeks.
Okay.
So people understand that we are not only on the side of getting the votes, we are on the side of making sure that people are not disenfranchised, by working to extend the continuous voter registration exercise by 2 weeks.
So let's time travel.
Yes.
Let's say,
How far back?
well, we're actually going forward.
Yes, good.
You are the president of Nigeria.
Yes.
What are your key priorities?
One is security. That country we must secure the country so that everybody in the country is safe and everybody who's coming into the country feels safe.
Okay.
Second is electricity. I cannot say enough about that. We are not starting yet if we cannot light up Nigeria. I mean, I'm not saying set it ablaze, but put electricity in every nook and cranny of Nigeria. Third is infrastructure. Nigeria needs to be integrated by way of high-level infrastructural development, where roads are connecting places, rail connecting places, and schools are being built where they don't exist, hospitals, 17 million houses are needed to take care of our housing needs. And you have the manpower, you have the human resource. We actually have the resource to be one of the best places to live on earth. But you cannot get there until you stop electing mediocre people as leaders.
How do you tackle
And
the
in
current?
addition to education,
Yeah.
health, agriculture, tourism, we're in the Bay Area today, and entertainment has become part of why Nigeria is popular in the world.
Yes.
Music, movies, imagine this happened without intervention of government. Imagine a government that is forward-thinking, progressive, being in charge. Imagine how much we could be making from entertainment alone or tourism just in general based on the power of innovation of our young people.
Again, we are assuming you're the president. How do you tackle the incredible amount of money that the current administration, the past administration have borrowed from China and other foreign countries?
One of the things I started to get worried about a few weeks ago is that Nigeria may have borrowed itself back into slavery, right? And what will happen is that first we have to stop the bleeding of Nigeria by corrupt politicians, by competent people. I am absolutely sure that the current president of Nigeria doesn't even know where to sign dotted lines. I doubt that he read the conditions under which monies were borrowed from China, and just as they did in Zambia recently. I don't want China. I don't want us to wake up one day and find out that we have already mortgaged Nigeria to China, and that China will just come and put a flag and say, "Hey, we now own Nigeria." The way to do it is to develop the resources that Nigeria has got and use it to the advancement and betterment of Nigerians. Like I said in our Spicer Hits 10-point program, we can completely turn Nigeria around by internally developing Nigeria, by ensuring we provide jobs for young people who are in place instead of bringing the Chinese people to come and do work for us. If we are borrowing from you, you should not be dictating the laborers who are implementing the outcome of what we borrowed and what we'll pay back. To look at what the interest rate on that which we are borrowing, and to look at why should we borrow when we still have to put money in foreign reserve and and Chase Bank and Bank of England, when we actually can use those funds to develop our own country. It's a lot of conversation that has to happen holistically over time as soon as we have the right people in place. One of the things I keep saying to people, the moment we have the right team on the ground in Nigeria, running Nigeria, right?
Yes.
The attitude of the world will change towards Nigeria because people treat you sometimes internationally based on your team members. If they know that you have dumb people, of course, they'll take advantage of you. If you have sharp people, they respect you and have respectable conversation about relationships that are in trade, diplomacy, international affairs, economic discussions, multilateral, bilateral deals, treaties. All these things are based on the kind of minds you have representing you. That's why you can't afford to keep making the mistake of electing or appointing dumb people to run our affairs for us.
You mentioned corruption.
Yes.
And you mentioned improving the education.
Yes.
I want to kind of focus slightly on corruption and basically ask you, what plan do you have in place to stem corruption, even in the new political party you're forming that other previous administrations have not been able to do? What do you have? How do you tackle that?
Previous administrations have not been able to prevent corruption because they have not applied even the simplest tools to stop corruption. For instance, you're doing a broadcast here today.
Yes.
Based on very small cameras.
Yes.
That you mentioned your laptop.
Yes.
That's technology, right? In the past, to have this same interview with me, you needed to have maybe 3 gigantic cameras.
Of course.
All looking around. What does that tell you? You're using technology. You're digitalizing, your outputs or how you conduct business on the internet, and it's costing you less. So in Nigeria, we need to do the same thing. To stop corruption, first you must know the number of workers you have, you must pay them very well, and you must make sure that they are accountable and transparent to you, the employer, and by extension the Nigerian people. But most importantly is to ensure that a lot of things we're doing now that are done in the analog ways are also digitalized. For example, if you have money that you need to spend, the allocation of that money should be on record, available to everybody through, an electronic system. So e-payment systems will allow you to account for how money goes to people who they went to. Contract system will allow people to bid for contracts online, submit their documentation online, so that it can be viewed by others. And the moment most of corruption in Nigeria happens through the opaqueness of how we conduct our public affairs. The moment you make them transparent, you shine light on them, people can't steal anymore, because you know what? The way we are doing it is that we wait until money is stolen, and then we start chasing after the thieves. But by then, the thieves have used the money to buy judges, the biggest lawyers, and they've also bought landed property, chieftaincy titles, bought seats in front of churches and mosques. So it's harder to catch those kind of people than when you don't even allow it to happen in the first place. So you reduce the amount of money a person can even steal in the first place. And then the rest is to ensure that you have your judiciary working very well, so that people who conduct criminal affairs in government can get punished on time. Because there have to be consequences, I have no doubt about it. But it's to ensure that you create enough paper trail that before money leaves the public purse, it is tracked down and stopped from getting out most of the time, as opposed to trying to get them back after the fact.
So, and I'll just again...
And I would say that I haven't seen any of these administrations in the past do something like that.
So to people who are, say, other aspirants looking to basically compete against you,
yes.
What do you see right now? I just want to kind of have you visualize it. What do you think are your biggest obstacles at this point?
Still likely we have, a society where what I've said is monetization of conscience, where people can be sold and bought.
How do you compete against people who are actually already deeply entrenched and they have the money already?
So we have to change the currency for doing politics, from paper money to ideas. And that's where the kind of consciousness and confidence building we're having right now with our people is yielding results. That people are starting to talk about concrete issues. Politics is becoming about more and more of substance, and we are pushing boundaries for conversation that needs to happen within Nigerian society.
What is your immediate, what I would say, if you could just give a roadmap of where you would like to see Nigeria under your administration, if you were elected?
Nigeria where every person is secure, and the way to do that is not only to modernize our security agencies, but to use technology a lot. So I went to the Computer History Museum today, and we typed in on a search engine, it was Sambisa Forest. That's the place where the insurgency is happening in Nigeria. And with just a click of a joystick, you can see the length and breadth of the Sambisa Forest in 3D. You can see it from above and below. And I'm sure our military don't even have that capability. I've never seen them display it publicly before. The ability to use drone to, gather intelligence, strike where necessary, could help a lot in even monitoring like these headsmen, kidnappers and things. There's a lot we can do. Second, of course, I mentioned power. We have to grow the power sector from this miserable 7,000 megawatts to 24,000 immediately in the next few. Then use renewable energy a lot. Solar the plan is to have 4,500 megawatts of solar energy. We have research and found that some solar projects can actually be done in 90 days.
Oh, wow.
Yes, and that could cover a whole campus and surrounding towns. And that will provide employment because we put these parts together. Union hands to do that, to maintain them, and to also keep doing elsewhere. Education, we intend to put in 200,000 teachers, health sector about 160,000 health workers. In the housing sector, we're talking about over 17 million houses to be built. With regards to infrastructure, we're talking about 200,000 kilometers of road to be built. That is dualizing every Nigerian federal road right now, that are single lane across the country.
So, not to interrupt you,
Yeah.
you're running you're an aspirant for the presidency in Nigeria. Most of us in the diaspora cannot vote. So why are you talking to us when we absolutely have no voting
I
rights?
talk to everybody. But there's a difference between voting rights and your ability to influence votes. And I need two things from the diaspora. First is because we don't have godfathers behind our campaign, our party, we need support from the diaspora, financial support. And the diaspora has become the social security department for Nigeria. A lot of projects going on at home as we speak. Even individual projects come from the diaspora. You're sponsoring wedding, helping to build your communities, sponsoring your brother or sister, uncles, children to school. You're giving your parents support. So, and there are over 6 million Nigerians in diaspora.
Of course.
Who are doing likely well, who can contribute to this. But most importantly, the diaspora has the ability to convince people at home to vote for the right person because they respect you. They understand that, you live in places where things work. And when you tell them, trust this guy because he will make things work, they will believe you more than they probably believe everybody else.
You've had the exposure to technology. Yes. Most of your Sahara reporter platform are on the technology.
Yes.
To your global audience, to your potential voters right now, yes, what do you want them to know from you that may have not been heard in your travels? This is your platform to basically talk to your audience.
Yes. I just want them to know that this is our best chance to turn Nigeria around. And what you should know about me is that I am not afraid to break new ground. I'm not afraid to step on toes. I'm not afraid to fight for what I believe at the risk of my life. And I'm not the kind of person who don't understand how the world works. I have lived inside the world for 19 years, traveled around the world. I have been an entrepreneur that's created, a product that started from the scratch with a laptop and became a global platform within 12 years. I am somebody who's employed people to work for me. I understand the intricacies of what goes on in government. I know how to follow the money, particularly how to follow the money. And I know how you can use money, little money, to make big things happen. I did it with Sahara reporters, and I'm about to do it in Nigeria.
So in a country, and I'm speaking as a Nigerian,
Yes,
that is fully accustomed to not having to fund political campaigns out of their pocket, because here in the US, donors funds
yes,
the campaigns. Corporate do donate, but they do have limitation.
yes.
How do you convince Nigeria, who are not accustomed to taking money out of their pocket to support a candidate? How do you convince them to take the money out of their pocket to support you?
Well, we asked them to look at two options. The way Nigeria is today possibility that's confronting or looking Nigerians in the face. The possibility of a progressive country, a country that's safe, secure, prosperous, peaceful, and progressive, and actually to choose between those two. And, so you can invest all your life on the one that's in ruins, and you can invest a little in the ones that will take you out of the doldrums. And that is how we've been having the conversation. But it is more than just a conversation of gloom and doom. It's also a conversation of engagement. It's a conversation that is driven by interaction. It's a conversation that is driven by substance.
Now, I don't deal with tabloids. I'm strictly business. I focus on the key points.
You're about to go into that.
But I'll be remiss if I didn't ask you, what was that whole situation with the Oni of Ife? Can you shed some light on that?
So I will, but it's something that I have put behind me, but it's necessary to keep enlightening people about it. We were invited to see the Oni of Ife, and we were number one on his list. We were supposed to meet at 12 noon, and we arrived at 11:48. Respecting that's why we went. And when we arrived there, he kept us waiting for 3.5 hours. And there was nobody until about 20 minutes before his arrival that somebody came up and tapped us on the shoulder and said, the Kabiyesi will be on his way shortly. And they said it was 20 minutes, took another hour. So by the time he showed up, because it's in my character to speak truth to power, and particularly in Ile-Ife, there is an adage that says that Omodegbon Agbagbon Lafida Ile-Ife. The Ile-Ife itself came into existence because everybody had a right to speak. Both the elders and the youth. That was how Ile-Ife came to be, according to what we were told by our elders. So I had to tell the Kabiyesi that we would have preferred if he treated us differently. And we delivered it in the most respectful manner. But some other things happened very quickly. We were tear gassed inside the palace.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And we were choking. And when we went outside to catch some fresh air, we were physically assaulted.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so we went back inside, and eventually it was resolved. We had a good outing, and we think that it was well handled. That's why I'm putting this behind me. But it's important for people who might have misunderstood this to understand that was what happened. And for those who may not have misunderstood it, to understand that it is all right to have an outrage against courage.
So I mean, again, going back to my Nigerian environment, yeah. I can relate to your speaking truth to power.
Yes.
But in an environment where most people are too timid to speak truth to power, how do you inspire this and the next generation to be able to do so when, in fact, most of their life they've been instructed or conditioned to not be able to speak truth to power?
It's understandable. You see, every society in the world has been under bondage and been oppressed for so long. People are conditioned to be timid, but you must get a point where you don't condemn yourself to that timidity, otherwise your generation will be wiped out completely. And I draw that inspiration from what happened before I came here. I was in Badagry and found out that just from Badagry markets alone, slave market, over 43 million black people were sold into slavery. And I'm asking myself, how did people withstand that kind of oppression for 400 years? And there was no outrage, there was no resistance. If you don't have that culture of resistance in you, you'll be a slave forever.
That's true.
Yes. And so I'm just hoping that people will get inspiration from not only what I say or what I do, but also their own innate capability to attain and achieve freedom by not being afraid. what most people are afraid of is death. But the first thing that happens to you, if you are so fearful that you can't even express yourself, is that you have died before the real death. Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
It's been very educational, and it's been very introspective in a way to get to know who you are. Because up till now, myself, even though I've read some few things about you and I knew about the Sahara reporter, it was just kind of like just getting the whole picture together. But most of our readers, and also because I'm also the editor for Africa Online Magazine, asking who is this person? We don't know anything about this person. So I'm hoping by the end of tonight, most of the voters, potential voters in Nigeria, will have known about this candidate or aspirant to be able to actually walk away with a knowledge base. And again, I want to thank you. I know you've been traveling quite a lot. And I don't know how you do it. You must be jet lagged.
20 hours of traveling.
Of course.
But we have to do this.
Where are you going next after this?
So I'll be in Auckland, I think, tomorrow, and we'll be in Silicon Valley area, and I think on Sunday we're going to LA.
Okay.
And I'll be heading back to Nigeria afterwards.
Okay. I wish you the best.
Thank you.
And again, thank you very much for being on the show.
Thank you, sir.
Best of luck.